Yo, what's up guys? It's Jeff, and today we need to talk about the November event that just happened. Today we saw some awesome new things from Apple. We saw the new Apple Silicon chip, some new Macs, and also we got some more in-depth info on macOS Big Sur. So let's just dive right in, starting with the new Apple Silicon chip. Okay, so the new chip is called the M1 chip, and this thing is absolutely insane. The specs are a new 8-core CPU with 4 high-performance cores and then 4 high-efficiency cores. Basically, this new CPU design is kind of a range to allow the new Macs to control which cores are active based upon what you are doing on your Mac. So let's say you are using FCPX, Final Cut Pro, you'll be using more of the high-efficiency cores, and then if you're just web browsing or doing lighter tasks, you'll be taking advantage of those high-efficiency cores. Now, according to Apple, this new chip design allows for a 3 times better efficiency boost over Intel chips that we just saw this past year, and we'll talk about how big of an impact that really makes later on in today's video when we talk about those new Macs. Now, moving on to the GPU, and we have a new 8-core integrated GPU, and this is, according to Apple, the fastest integrated GPU ever. So I'm super stoked to see how it performs in real life, and we'll talk about that just a little bit later as far as how that affects the performance with these new Macs. Now, we also see the M1 chip featuring a 16-core neural engine, which is super important. It'll significantly improve AI performance. And we also see some extra security layers as well, which makes sure that the new Macs that we're seeing are still the safest computers out there when we talk about system security. Now, along with this chip, we are also seeing some super awesome technology coming from Apple, and the first of it is Rosetta 2. Rosetta 2 allows for translation of Intel-based apps to be translated into apps that can run on Apple Silicon. And what's really cool is there's no expected performance loss, even though Rosetta 2 is having to translate the Intel-based apps to the M1 chip. So that's really cool that we're not seeing any performance loss, and we're also seeing iOS apps being natively run on the Mac. So you can now run your favorite iOS apps on the Mac natively. And I expected this because Apple Silicon is in iOS, like with the A14 Bionic chip. So with the M1 chip, I was really expecting that we could be able to do this, but I didn't know if Apple was actually going to allow us to run iOS apps natively on the Mac, but finally we can do it. You can now run any iOS apps on the Mac, and that should be coming with the first version of macOS Big Sur. So that's just a brief rundown of the new M1 chip, but what's really cool are these new awesome Macs that this new chip will be shipping with. So first we have the new MacBook Air, and here's the rundown. So we have a 3.5 times performance boost over the current MacBook Air, 2 times faster SSD performance, 18 hours of battery life, and the M1 chip will also be improving the FaceTime camera through AI technology in those neural engine cores. Now, maybe I skipped over that 18-hour battery life too quickly, but that's absolutely insane. Like, I can't even stay up for 18 hours during the day and constantly use my computer. So I think it's pretty safe to say that this is an all-day battery life experience when we're talking about the MacBook Air. Now, with this new M1 chip, though, you can actually dive a little bit deeper into photo and video editing, specifically with the MacBook Air, which is super cool. Quite simply put, the new graphics chip allows for much faster performance with the GPU, and basically the MacBook Air can do a lot of things that you couldn't do before, like edit 4K content and render that content in a reasonable amount of time. All of this, and you are still getting that super insane battery life, so I think that's a pretty good deal. Now, what is this going to cost you? Well, it's still $999, same as last year. So in my mind, I'd say that's a pretty darn good deal given the improvements here, specifically with battery life and performance. Oh, and before I forget, there's no fan. There's no fan anymore in the MacBook Air. I mean, that's super crazy. I mean, even the people at Apple thought that was crazy. So yeah, there's no fan, and I think that space that the fans were in were probably used up by more battery life or battery like cores, and that's why we're getting much better battery life. So yeah, we'll have to see how that ages and exactly how the system performs. But yeah, no more fans in this year's MacBook Air with the M1 chip. Now, next up, we have the Mac Mini, and this is something I fully expected. At WWDC, we saw the development Mac Minis shipping with this M1 chip earlier this year. So it was almost like expected to see a Mac Mini with this M1 chip as one of the first devices to be released with this new Apple Silicon. Basically, it's the same story as before with the MacBook Air. With the Mac Mini, you can now actually edit and render Final Cut Pro videos without feeling like you are in a jar of peanut butter, just slugging along and not getting anything done. Now, specifically for developers, this is also a huge upgrade because you can now do so much more with coding and web development with this new Mac Mini with the M1 chip, which is super awesome because this new Mac Mini starts at just $699. So you're getting a lot more performance, a lot more abilities with this Mac Mini, and it's actually cheaper. Now, what's really cool is you can hook this up to a Pro Display XDR and have that full 6K quality. So if you want to buy a $5,000 display and use it with a $699 Mac, that's pretty cool now, and you can now do that. So that's the new Mac Mini, faster CPU. You can actually do things with the GPU now, and it's still cheaper than the previous Mac Mini. That's just a brief rundown. Okay, so last but not least, the new 13-inch MacBook Pro, starting at the same $1,299 price as what we saw before in previous years. So that is, again, pretty insane that we're not seeing a price hike when it comes to the new MacBook Pro. So a brief rundown is 2.8 times faster CPU performance over what we saw last year, 5 times faster GPU performance, and that will allow you to play back 8K full res ProRes footage. And let me just say, I was able to play back 8K, like full res 8K footage on my 2018 MacBook Pro. I think the true benefits of this GPU are really going to come when you're rendering video. It's going to be so much faster, especially with performance improvements for ProRes and if you own a Red Code RAW. Now, we're also seeing an active cooling system, so no, Apple has not taken out the fans in the new MacBook Pro. We have an awesome active cooling system that is super quiet is what they say, and then we're also seeing 20 hours of battery life. 20 hours. Like, I didn't know that was possible, but it's the longest running Mac ever made. 20 hours. That's amazing. So what that's going to do specifically for pro users out there, you can edit photos, you can edit videos, and do that all without having to plug in your Mac to a wall charger. And you can do that like on an airplane. You can edit a full 8K video and render that out on the airplane and have it ready to upload when you land. Like, that's super cool. That's just one example, but 20 hours of battery life, super insane. We also have better mics. They're studio quality mics on the sides there. So apparently that's supposed to give you just much better like FaceTime performance and all that, like just better studio quality mics that will allow for, people to hear you better and more clearly. Now we're also getting that FaceTime camera AI performance as well. So with the new M1 chip, that should help you with AI specifically on that FaceTime camera. I don't think that there's actually new hardware in any of these new Macs like the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro. They're just kind of upgrading it with camera AI technology. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, should have a better FaceTime experience. Now, this Mac also connects to a Pro Display XDR through that Thunderbolt 3 port, and that will allow you to display at that full 6K display quality. Now, I think this is a little bit more useful for the MacBook Pro because a lot of MacBook Pro users eventually hook their displays up like to a display like this one, the 6K display, and that would be really cool to just have that ability to connect to the Pro Display XDR because obviously this display, super awesome colors, really good brightness, and all that good jazz. So that's just a brief kind of rundown of the specs of the new MacBook Pro. There's a whole lot more that we have to test, and these are actually becoming available today to order and will eventually be shipping next week. So you can actually purchase yours today. I've got all of the new Macs coming out. I've purchased all of them and we'll be doing in-depth reviews on all of them because this is the biggest performance change that we've seen in years with the Mac. So I think all of these things are really interesting to see with the new Macs, specifically with that M1 chip, and we'll just have to see exactly how that plays out. Now, we saw the price tags. We saw, everything is pretty much remaining the same except for the Mac Mini. That's even cheaper. But should you guys go out and buy these Macs? Well, the MacBook Air, I would definitely buy. The MacBook Mini or the Mac Mini, I would hold off on that maybe if you are a web developer or coder, yes, that's perfect for you. But if you're a video editor, I'd go with something a little bit faster, maybe like a current generation 15-inch MacBook Pro, or maybe something like a Mac Pro. I wouldn't necessarily entrust the Mac Mini to handle all of that. But MacBook Air, if you're a student, you just want a good, reliable computer for $999. That's an awesome price, especially when you're talking about the battery life and performance you're getting with that new MacBook Air. Now, one other thing I want to talk about is the MacBook Pro in relation to if you should purchase it. I don't think you pro users that are editing, 8K, 4K videos on Final Cut Pro, it's really professionally done and all that good jazz. I think you should hold off until you see the first reviews. Let people like me and other people on YouTube spend their money first, get the solid reviews, and see if you should invest into that new MacBook Pro. This is brand new technology, a brand new M1 chip. This is Apple's first step into Apple Silicon, specifically on computers. So this is the first time we're seeing it, and we definitely have to test this thoroughly before you guys entrust these new laptops to kind of take care of your workflow. So definitely stay tuned for reviews on that. Now, the last thing I want to talk about today is macOS Big Sur. I don't have too much to say. I'll have a full video on macOS Big Sur coming this Thursday when macOS Big Sur is released. So stay tuned on Thursday for the macOS Big Sur kind of review or video, and you should see exactly what benefits are being brought through macOS Big Sur. So guys, that was the November Apple event, and I'm honestly so excited to check out these new Macs from Apple with Apple Silicon installed. I've already ordered all of them, as I just said previously, so if you want to see some reviews on all of those Macs, definitely get subscribed and hit that bell button to stay up to date on when we publish those reviews. So thank you all for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video, but until then, I hope you all have an awesome day.